Welcome to the Hard Skills Show, where we discuss how to develop the nuanced hard skills, meaning the most challenging soft skills needed to make a real impact through your leadership. This episode will be part celebration, part reflection, and part insight. We're going to be celebrating what we learned from a year of hosting a live radio show and podcast. Woo! Looking back at some of the highlights, like just how many times did we use the word leadership on our show? Do you know? Maybe you'll find out today. And we have some Duke researchers here and program leaders who will be sharing the results of a group coaching program that applied my strategic pathway model framework that we've been talking about this whole season, this past year. And we will be answering questions like, what might be the impetus for starting a group coaching program within an academic healthcare system? What is the need identified there? Why group coaching? And what is the impact on how it can support leaders within large, highly complex academic medicine and healthcare environments and beyond? I'm your host, Dr. Mira Brancu, and I'm a leadership consulting and coaching psychologist, also founder of Tower Scope Leadership Academy, an associate professor, a Psychology Today columnist, author of The Millennial's Guide to Workplace Politics, and had my own leadership career before transitioning to helping teams and high-achieving women navigate their leadership complexities. Okay, so let's start with the celebration. So, like I said, I'm celebrating 1 year and 50 episodes. Now, our engineer corrected me. He said we're technically at 52, but if I'm not counting age, I'm not counting this. I'm counting 50 episodes. This is actually, I'm pretty sure, a year at the exact year mark. So here's a few fun facts. My operations manager, Maria Usace, did an important research review of the episodes and proudly exclaimed that we have said the word leadership 1,177 times, according to the transcripts. Now, I actually feel like it's been said even more times than that, and I feel like that's not nearly enough. But maybe we can make up for it on this show. All right. How about this? The 7 most common topics we talked about were around, number 1, making career and leadership decisions, even when you don't have the full plan laid out. We did that with guests such as Carrie Patterson, Karen Edwards, Olivia Noddison, Dory Clark, Lisa DeAngelis, and Sharon Hull. Integrating technology is the second topic area, like my interviews with guests like Ernest Wade and Jonathan Kirshner. We talked about new types of leadership models with people like Tracy Calandrillo and her responsive leadership model. We talked about unlocking self-trust with guests like Jessie Janelle and Dr. Vanessa Roddenberry. We talked about authenticity and values with guests like Laura Eigel and Mickey Feldman-Simon and Alexis Francis. We talked about resilience culture with guests such as Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier and Ken Nowak. And number 7, navigating a variety of diversity, equity, and inclusion challenges with guests such as Dr. Iman Abdul-Rahman, Nori Jaba, Gareth Gwynn, Lidmila Praslova, and Christian Nunes. The themes of navigating workplace politics, supporting women in leadership, and diversity, equity, inclusion were kind of discussions that were infused throughout most of them. So I guess those are the things I'm into because I keep wanting to bring people back about that. And we did get the chance to do some live coaching sessions supporting several superstar women in business, including Elisa Herr of Unity Web Agency and Ainsley Sesniak of Speak Out Sisterhood. Now, we also were able to discuss a variety of really interesting books. And this is kind of partly what I love about this show and podcast is that I was able to read a lot more because I had an excuse. I had to read them in order to talk about them, right? So I'm going to just, if you're watching right now, here are the books. And if you're watching the recording, you can see them, but I'm going to list them out to you if you're just listening later on, just the audio. So 16 books we covered: Bully Proof by Rob Fazio, Keeping Your Seat at the Table by Nori Jaba, Becoming Coachable with Jacqueline Lane and Scott Osman, Values First by Laura Eigel, The Long Game and Entrepreneurial You and Reinventing You and Stand Out by Dory Clark, The Canary Code by Ludmila Praslova, The Leadership Signature by Greg Pennington, Becoming a Strategic Leader by George Watts and Lori Blazek, Work from the Inside Out by Tammy Goller-Lieb. Oh, I spelled it wrong there. I'm going to fix it just for her. Live right now in person. Okay. The Resilience Plan, Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier. Professional Careers by Design by Sharon Hull. Brick by Brick by Cedric Williams. Embracing the Unknown by Lisa DeAngelis. Suddenly in Charge by Roberta Madison. Let's Go by Jamie Ramsden. And Developing Anti-Racist Cultural Competence by Dr. Iman Abdulrahman. And there's some media and products that we also covered. Different People podcast and testbias.com were also developed by Dr. Iman Abdulrahman. The Let's See Labs were developed by Gareth Gwynn. EquiSkills app by Minmi and was developed by Dr. Sarah Rabinovich. The CDR three-dimensional assessment suite, what I personally use, is by Nancy Parsons. And Work from the Inside Out podcast is by Tammy Goller-Loeb. Okay, so these are super interesting, and I can't wait for this coming year where I get to cover even more books and even more media and more products. So stay tuned for more of that. Pretty cool. I'm pretty proud. I'm pretty excited about that. But without any further ado, I am so excited to introduce our special guests today. So first, we have Dr. Mara Becker. Dr. Becker is a physician scientist and vice dean for faculty in Duke University School of Medicine's Office of Faculty. She provides leadership on all faculty matters, including advancement, development, mentoring, and professionalism for faculty within the School of Medicine. Her previous translational research focused on optimizing treatment and creating individualized therapeutic strategies for rheumatic diseases in children. Super interesting background. She previously also served as division director of rheumatology and associate chair for the Department of Pediatrics and at Children's Mercy in Kansas City. Okay, I could go on and on about these people's backgrounds here, by the way, but like we have limited time. Okay, folks. Okay, moving on. Next, we have Jessica Schonberg. She's the director of educational programs at the Duke University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. So she works with Dr. Mara Becker. She has more than 15 years of experience developing and implementing professional development programs for faculty at all career stages. She has particular interests in leadership development, support for women leaders, and the use of restorative practices to increase connection and improve culture. Boy, don't we need more of that right now. Jessica has a Master of Education in Training and Development from North Carolina State University. And then last but not least, Jessica Sperling, PhD. She is an assistant professor of internal medicine at Duke University, as well as the director of applied research, evaluation, and engagement of Duke University's Social Science Research Institute, SSRI. Is the short of it. She focuses on responsive and collaborative research, evaluation, and research and practice partnerships. At Duke, her work has focused on education, healthcare delivery, diversity and inequality, and innovation and pilot programming. She holds a PhD in sociology from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. All right, welcome and great to have you on the show, Mara, Jessica, and Jessica.
Thank you. We're really excited to be here. I had to hold myself back from unmuting earlier to comment on all your cool books and all of your cool media. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get into it. Mara, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
You have spearheaded what we're going to be talking a lot about, which is the idea of infusing a new group coaching program, right? And let's sort of backtrack, though, thinking through like, how did you get to this space? How did you get to this place? You were a clinician and a researcher, and you were interested in pediatric rheumatoid conditions. That has nothing to do with what you're doing now. Okay, so over
Don't remind
time,
me. Don't remind me. I know.
none of us have this experience, right?
Yeah.
Over time, you took on leadership roles. So like, talk with us about that transition that you went through your own leadership journey. What did you see happen over time for you? What did you see as a need? How did you come to this sort of like important leap about thinking through the importance of offering this kind of program?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for asking. And I do think it's really interesting how your career takes such unexpected turns. And I'm sure you'd say the same thing as many of your guests, I'm sure, would say. And I sometimes attribute that to academic medicine, but you can see it in all fields, but particularly in academic medicine. So as you mentioned, I'm a pediatric rheumatologist, which is a small and quirky field. So we take care of children who have rheumatic conditions like lupus, scleroderma, arthritis. And I loved it. And actually, I went into medicine thinking I wanted to do that like Norman Rockwell painting of the guy out in the community, just taking care of the people. And I never wanted to go into administration. In fact, I thought it was like bad. And so I remember telling my mentors, well, I'm just going to see patients forever. And as I got into it, there were questions that I had and started to get a little bit into research, as you mentioned, and tried to answer why our kids were not tolerating medicines the way I would expect, which was terrific and a really interesting exploration. And over time, I realized, though, that if I wanted to be part of the change, I wanted to be part of creating strategy in the field or creating strategy for the way we care for children or the way that we evolved in medicine, like I really needed to have a seat at the table. And early in my career, my division chief or division director left, and I self-advocated to my chair. And I said, well, why don't you consider me for that job? Because not me, who else? Who else could do a better job? And so help me God, he gave it to me. So I was like, yeah, no, it was one of those moments where I was kind of proud of myself for advocating to consider me in that role. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I realized very quickly in that role that what I loved the most about it was the people, was helping to support the people that I was leading. And that began to grow into other leadership roles in the department. And I realized that it wasn't just, it was that interpersonal kind of relational aspect of leadership that really drew me into this role. And over time, even though, I mean, yes, we can handle a budget. Yes, I can handle research. The truth is I love the development of people and helping them to navigate their own careers and thinking about their own futures. And so as positions in the faculty affairs space started to open up, and I moved to Duke in 2019 in a role at the department level for pediatrics, I realized how much I loved kind of helping people, sponsoring people, shepherding people through their own careers, helping them kind of resolve thorny conflict, all the people stuff that some people shy away from because it's thorny and messy and not always fun. But that was the element of leadership that I really loved. And so what I think has been interesting for me, my growth edge for sure has been, I started off leading people like me in my field, quirky, weird little pediatric rheumatologists who there are like 300 of us in the country, and then moved to other pediatric subspecialists. So I got to interact with, neurologists and cardiologists and gastroenterologists, and they're all have their own little different personalities. And now I'm in a school position where I help with faculty affairs of people of all different fields. And so that has been a really interesting, always different challenge for me because I realize that, people are complex and they're particularly complex around different types of fields of medicine. And it's never dull. It's never dull. That's the part that I love about it.
So let's stop there before we reach our ad break. And when we come back, let's talk more about what it is that you saw in your own journey. And Jessica, also, I'll be asking you, Schonberg, I'll be asking you your kind of what you're seeing from, faculty development perspective about various needs. And we'll break it down from there. Okay. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests, Dr. Mara Becker, Jessica Schonberg, and Jessica Sperling. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you would like to join us online right now and ask us any questions in real time, you can find us right now on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests today, Mara Becker, Jessica Schonberg, which I was mispronouncing the whole entire time, and Jessica Sperling. Okay, so this is kind of a broad question, and Jessica Sperling, our engineer told me just to call you by your last names because there's two Jessicas with the same initial last name, and maybe I might just do that. I'm going to open this up for all of you. Jessica Sperling, even though you are here to talk about the research piece of it, because that was your contribution, definitely opening it up to like any experiences that you have had along the way as well that connects to all of this. As you're thinking about, the challenges that faculty face, and especially faculty in leadership roles, what are sort of common themes, experiences, needs that you see that you felt like coaching, not just individual coaching, but maybe group coaching could help with? And you can pull from your personal experiences. You could pull from also like the people that you see and the stories that you've sort of heard about as well.
I can start with that if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So I think that in my experience doing leadership development work, one of the most common themes that stands out is that people are often promoted on one set of skills and then have to rely very heavily on an entirely different set of skills in order to be successful in their leadership role. And I think that that's true at all different levels of leadership. You know, when you become a physician or a scientist, there's a very clear training program to make sure that you have the skills that you need to succeed when you get started in that role. And that path doesn't really exist in any clear fashion for leadership. And so I think some of the biggest things that bubble up are the people management that Mara was talking about, the interpersonal conflict, managing other people who perhaps you were peers with at some point in the not too distant past. And now you have this responsibility for setting the direction, setting the vision for that group. And then there's a separate set of skills around managing budgets and money and that kind of thing that I think is perhaps less suited to the coaching that we're talking about today. But I definitely think that the people management is something that you aren't necessarily taught in training, but if you can't do it, you're highly unlikely to be successful.
I'm going to piggyback
Absolutely.
on that really quickly
Yeah.
because I do think that is perfect and so accurate and a huge reason for why we embark in this work. And think about it, in academic medicine, it's scientists, it's people who are super successful researchers or clinicians or educators. They're experts in their field. There's no questioning that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've been cultivating this other component of their skill set, right? And so a lot of times you find some of these folks that have been promoted to leadership roles, which you understand why they might be so well known and so successful in certain domains. But we're just awakening, I think, right now to recognizing the importance of developing leadership skills along the way as well.
Yeah.
I'll build on that a tiny bit. Just to first of all echo all of that, that skills in one area don't mean skills in another, and they're very, science and leadership are not, they're not the same. But I think perhaps also relevant is that people coming into these roles have typically excelled. You're used to being good and doing, and working hard, of course, but really speaking to your strengths and your capacities. And so then coming into something that does actually require a very different skill set that you might not be as well versed in, that can be a challenging thing, and it can be challenging to say, hey, I need help. And so this is also something that might be a little bit or problematic in jumping into something that really is very different and very new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that I'm thinking about this as you're describing it is, I think about my kids, right? And my kids might demonstrate some interests and some raw, skills in certain areas. And so then they start specializing more and more in certain areas. And now all of a sudden they're really good at this one thing, right? And, we all do that, right? We all sort of like demonstrate, we've got these raw materials. And so we start honing those skills, we start specializing. All of a sudden, you get through your bachelor's degree. Now you might want to specialize even more and even more. Some of us go on to, higher level degrees, graduate programs, and things like that. All of that is specializing and specializing further and further in certain area. But now all of a sudden, we're tapped, then somebody says, you also have the raw materials for leadership. We've seen you work well with people. We've seen you, be able to sort of interact well with people and support people. We'd like to put you in this position. Great. Okay. But then nobody at that point says, by the way, that's another respecialization. By the way, you need to learn extra brand new skills now in a brand new field called leadership. And that is an extra specialization. Nobody tells you that. And yet that is the reality. That's kind of like how I sort of condense all of that.
Totally agree. And I think overall, we spend a lot of time thinking about developing junior people in medicine and kind of forget development's a lifelong thing. And particularly for leaders who might be very senior and not used to being developed. They too need development, especially when it comes to new skill sets and these new roles. But that can get overlooked, I think, in time as you make this assumption that someone as senior and as established and as good at all these things is that they may also need ongoing development in a whole new skill set.
Yeah. Now, let me then take that a step further. So you've identified the need. We know now why, right? Most people then think, oh, I need more training, right? Now, your office actually does offer lots of training like other sort of faculty offices do in leadership development, right? So what made you think that in addition to the training that you offer, which is fairly intensive year-long programs, in addition to that, you felt like in certain cases or for certain needs, either individual or group coaching would be helpful for certain things.
Jessica, do you want to start first and then I'll piggyback?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I think that our team, our office, we're all big believers in coaching. And I think the first model of that comes to mind is one-on-one coaching. And we have been fortunate to have some internal faculty at Duke who have become coach certified and been able to provide internal coaching, including Sharon Hull, who you mentioned is one of the authors that you have been talking about. But in addition to that one-on-one coaching, we did have a little bit of experience with group coaching in kind of a different setting prior to this experience. In two different settings, we've used group coaching. One was early on in the pandemic when we were really sort of very quickly trying to figure out how to best support faculty who are understandably very stressed, very frightened, very overloaded and burned out as they navigated both healthcare challenges and all the rest of the stuff that came with the pandemic that we all dealt with. And so we opened up a series of what we called rapid response group coaching sessions that were open to all faculty in the School of Medicine. And we had a coach who led each one. Jody Hawes, who's still at Duke, was a part of that. She's a faculty member in neurology. And we sort of loosely laid out some themes that might be covered during those sessions, but really let whoever showed up help dictate the theme for that day. So each session had a theme, and they talked about things like managing uncertainty, dealing with burnout, trying to find opportunities for joy during times of crisis, balancing, their caregiving load with their professional load during this difficult time. And so we knew that model was effective for bringing people together around shared challenges and creating a space where they could both lean on one another for peer support, but also get some facilitated guidance from a coach. And so we've also applied that to a grant that we've run through our office that provides some additional funding and support for faculty who have significant caregiving challenges and are trying to launch a research career at the same time. So we've implemented that same group coaching model as an additional support mechanism for the scholars on that grant too. So there was a little bit of sort of like framework or a little bit of fairy dust out there already that perhaps this was a model that could work. And then I think Mara came in and started thinking about it with you in the context of leadership development specifically. And so I'll pass it off to her.
So, okay, quick overview before the break. Reach was good, right? I wanted to get this to as many people as possible. We had a lot of new leaders in the department. Sustainability was big. I wanted to develop a platform where they created a peer mentorship, a peer support group so that they can rely on each other over time. Novelty was important. Many of these folks had done our cohort programs, had done traditional leadership training, but never anything like this. And really it's about connectivity and relationship building for me. And I don't think anything can do it quite as well as a group coaching session where people come in and are their authentic selves and learn together as a holistic group. And so I think all of that builds from what we learned so far in conjunction with the needs for trying to get as much development to these brand new division directors in the Department of Pediatrics was a really important piece as we were considering this option for them, as you and I were discussing.
Yeah. Those are all great reasons. And I have one other thought on that, but I'm going to hold off until we come back from the ad break. So you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests today, Dr. Mara Becker, Jessica Schoenberg, and Jessica Sperling. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m., and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills. We are going to keep you on your toes by introducing now Jessica Schoenberg as Jessica and Jessica Sperling as Jess. That's what we decided, just so you're not confused about who's being asked, especially if you're listening later and you're trying to track who's speaking. And now I'm going to try to keep track. What did you say, Mara?
We were very productive on the break. We have figured out how to tag the right Jessica.
That's right. Now we'll see if I can succeed in keeping it all straight. Now, okay. So here's what I was thinking as you were sharing about kind of the benefits and what you wanted to pull out of group coaching, applying a group coaching model to helping supporting faculty and leadership. You mentioned reach, that makes perfect sense. Sustainability through peer support, novelty support group, and creating connections and relationships. Now, if you take faculty and you tell them that what you want to offer them is more relationship time and more connection time and more support, they're going to be like, no, thanks. Because there's like such a sort of hardcore, hard skill scientific group that they wouldn't recognize that that is exactly what they need. You know, often the very thing that we need is not the thing that we're leaning into and honing and honing and honing, right? And so one of the things that, helped as we were thinking through this is it's got to be within the context of a learning experience, right? Because what do people who are overeducated love more than anything is to continue being overeducated. So yes, it is in the context of a leadership development program, and it's got a lot of leadership content, but it's set up in a way that helps people recognize and realize just how much the relational aspect of being a leader is important, not just to what they're doing to support other people, but what they're doing to support themselves in order to support other people.
Totally agree. There is an element early on where each of the division chiefs did their own assessment. And I think they've all had assessments before, but the way that you were able to utilize their own leadership style with how that relates to others, I think was really impactful to them. And then they thought about how they related to, and they saw the people in the group who were very different, and that's in that scale, in the DISC assessment, and recognized like, oh, and then you paired them up, which was kind of like torture and kind of awesome and brilliant at this. So that their accountability partners are people who are very different than they were, which I think opened their eyes to just the concept of, well, this is how I'm going to solve this problem, but someone who has a different leadership style setup than I do might take it differently or might receive it differently. And it was just a beautiful way to give them something concrete to start with, but also allow them some introspection, I think, as we entered into that coaching environment. It was cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do that in our Towerscope Leadership Academy as well. But, given this is an academic setting, we can't just go by like it was cool, right? We
That goes a long way here.
We did it because it was really cool.
It's cool.
We also wanted to measure the coolness of this thing, right? The impact. So Jess, tell us about the program evaluation research you conducted. This is research that we presented at the Pediatric Academic Societies Meeting. How did you go about trying to measure this sort of nebulous thing that we thought was so cool?
Yeah, measuring coolness is a great way to put this. And it's true, not first of all, because we're in an academic environment, let's think about data, but also I'm on a soapbox, for any effort like this, doing something just because you think it's a jazzy idea isn't always the best way to drive effort. I want to know what comes from this. And I'll say, in this case, this was the first time something like this was being offered. And so it was a critical opportunity to learn, to say, hey, should we keep doing this? How should we keep doing this? Are there certain things we should really focus on sort of scaling and growing, or some things we should pull back on? And so one of the first things we did, and I have the advantage of having worked with these folks, particularly Jessica, before in some things. So as soon as we were in touch on this, I said, what about a logic model? And she said, I'm ahead. I got that. And that's a common kind of tool. And really what that's looking to do is saying, what are the intended outcomes, right? And so what is this hoping to achieve? Besides being something that's good and warm and fuzzy, what are the concrete intended outcomes? And so we started to really lay those out and really specify those. And we used that as the basis for a survey that was implemented for these participants at 2 points in time, at the start and end, from a research standpoint, to understand development. And then from a mixed methods standpoint and methodology, we implemented qualitative data collection and focus group with participants afterwards to start to really unpack some of this. So we got information around the what in terms of what had changed. And then we also were able to garner information about the whys and the hows. And that, the combination of the two, I'll say, is really, really important for understanding, was this worthwhile? But also, what about it made it worthwhile, if any of it was? And that's where we're really thinking about how this can inform next steps. And I could go on, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah, no, that's
And
awesome.
Mira, can I just jump in?
That's why we love her so much. Go on, other Jessica. I know you're dying to talk about the
I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge that Dr. Katie Bartlett, who's the vice chair for faculty in pediatrics, was really instrumental to this project as well. And she couldn't be on the podcast with us today, but she's pictured here for those who are watching online. She is pictured here presenting the work, and this evaluation wouldn't have happened without her contribution as well. So I just wanted to mention that while we're talking about it.
Absolutely. Yes. So yes, if you're watching either live or later on, we have a picture of Katie right here with Mara as they're presenting. And we also had another member, Victoria Lee, who also supported this work from SSRI. And what I'm showing here, if you're watching, but we're going to describe it audio wise as well, is the results on the poster. So let's take a look here, or describe this. What is it that we learned, Jess, when the data was finally pulled, and how did we get this data? How did you sort of learn, how did you figure out how to pull this kind of information out?
Yeah. So from a survey design standpoint, we saw a lot of phenomenal change. I was going to say significant, but I need to be careful. We have a small sample size here. But a lot of phenomenal growth in the specific areas that were measured. And so that's looking at having someone who holds me accountable. We saw that in those things that were most directly connected programmatically to what was happening. So having a leadership development plan with individualized leadership goals, having an accountability partner, we saw clear growth in those. But we also saw growth in other areas that were less sort of concrete resources that were intended. So, how being prepared to create organizational change, feeling supported in my leadership role. These were some of the other things that we were seeing from survey data. And then unpacking some of this with qualitative data was just a phenomenal opportunity to really understand how this worked. And so we saw really, what did that accountability, accountability doesn't sound fun most of the time. To be frank, right? Is anyone jazzed about accountability? I mean, maybe I am, but a lot of people are not. But we saw what it was about that partner that was helpful. We saw some outcomes that were not directly anticipated, but were relevant to the broader objectives of this program, like identifying people with complementary skill sets. So you can say, oh my gosh, you know what I hate? Budgets. But this person loved them. So I can go ask them questions and it's not pestering them because I know it speaks to their strengths and they can do the same of me, right? So seeing some of those resources being shared. We also saw one thing that I thought was really exciting from a culture change perspective. We saw evidence of people taking not just the sort of skills and capacities that they gained as leader, but the actual sort of leadership facilitation practices used in the coaching as something that they were looking to implement within their divisions. So some of the way that people were paired on projects, they said, these are actually some tools and techniques and strategies that I can use in my work, which wasn't something that was part of that initial logic model, wasn't something that was initially intended, but actually is a really, really exciting skill building sort of effect that can, affect institutional and culture change in ways that are really important.
Yeah, that's super meta too. So meta. I mean, it was the experiential. Yeah, Mara, go ahead.
I need to say one more thing. Back to the softy stuff.
Yeah.
Compliment my brilliant scientist over here. I loved the comments that I read about willingness to ask one another for help, lessening feelings of imposter syndrome. So back to that relationship, community building, those kinds of things came out in the focus groups that just made me feel like, okay, we are creating that environment where people can ask one another for help and can support one another rather than that kind of isolated, siloed position that frequently leaders sometimes find themselves in when they're in a leadership position. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one final exciting outcome that was unexpected that I'm not sharing yet, but I'm going to share after this ad break. That I think is kind of an amazing, unexpected outcome that none of us expected. So we're going to share that as well as the implications that this has for other highly complex academic medicine and healthcare environments. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and we'll be right back in just a moment. Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guests today, Dr. Mara Becker, Jessica Schoenberg, and Jess Sperling. So, see, I got all the names right. I think. Did I?
Got it.
Perfect. It took me 40 minutes, but I got there, folks. All right. So, no, but seriously, where we left off is we reviewed some of the sort of outcomes that were set up by the logic model, right? And then some additional data that was extracted from the focus group, the way that Jess set up the focus groups, right? To really think through and hear about the qualitative reflections that they had. There is one thing that has happened, and maybe it's specific to this group. We don't know. We're going to sort of look at piloting other groups in the future. But that was so unique about this group and so unexpected and such a pleasant outcome that I really wanted to include that. Mara, do you want to share what that is?
Right. You know, this is a good shout out to Katie Bartlett as well, who couldn't be with us at the department level. But this group continues to meet a year later. I mean, they meet regularly. They've invited new leaders that joined the department to join this group. And I think that kind of concept that the group continues to meet and be supportive to one another and have invited new folks in is a remarkable testament to that sustainability hope that I had hoped for, as well as the power of connection and peer mentorship and peer support that I think was really foundationally supported again through this program. So we were pretty excited to see that, thinking, okay, well, that's evidence enough that it was worth the investment.
Yeah. Now, it might be unique to this group, but it may not be, and we don't know. And that's one of the things that we'd like to sort of look into further with other future groups. But I just think about the level of resiliency that you can extract from a group that is set up to work in silos and trained to work as independently as possible, right? And yet they saw the value and continue to see the value in having a group that they can lean on, they can trust, that they can be vulnerable with, that they could get support from. That is the kind of thing that helps you navigate and work through all of the disruptions and challenges that we're facing today in healthcare and beyond, in all kinds of disrupted industries and our disrupted society, and in all kinds of ways. That is one way to be resilient, is social support. I mean, the research is there, people. Social support is what you need. And when you work in isolation, you don't have it. And then you're less equipped to ride those waves, right? So that piece means a lot to me and is sort of what I'm, tracking. Now it's still a small study, right? What implications, what areas do you three have of interest as you're looking forward to sort of, where we can take this, where other groups like this can take this, or other, high complex academic medicine institutions in healthcare? What do you see?
Can I start? Because I wanted to make a comment first on your point about this group and the sustainability. And it's meant to be a compliment to the fact that this isn't just a support group, like a bitching session group, provide tools for them to be able to coach one another, to hold one another accountable. And I think that does set it apart from just a support group of, that are going out to drink their sorrows away or to complain their sorrows away. You, I think, gave them the language, the tools, the kind of mechanisms to, I think, really coach one another through shared challenges. And this complex environment is filled with shared challenges. And there's so much power and just incredible agency that you can get when you have a group that you can bounce ideas off of and kind of relay your concerns to. So I think that was a huge testament and why it continues to work so well for this group. Okay,
Yeah,
what was your question?
great point. Great point.
Questions, because that I wanted to make sure was
yeah, no, I appreciate that. That is a great point. We're not teaching people how to have a support group here. That is a different mechanism that is under the therapy lane, right? Coaching is all about holding each other accountable, reaching results, supporting in a way that is towards developmental growth as a leader, right? And like you said, having the skill set to do peer coaching. So the entire goal was to learn how to phase myself out of being a coach and them into being the coach for each other. And there is a lot of skill to that. Yes. And so the second piece to that is, what do you see as kind of the opportunity, the promise of group coaching in other settings like this or for other groups?
Do you want me to jump in on that one?
Sure, Jessica. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that there was such an amazing opportunity to pilot this within pediatrics, and we had this sort of ideal scenario where there were a number of chiefs who were all somewhat relatively new in their leadership role. And so there was sort of a prime audience to do this. And some of what we saw in terms of the bonding of the group, the sense of trust that they built, and potentially what you've been talking about with how they've continued to meet after the program ended could be connected to them all being in the same department. It also might not, though. And so when I think about where I want to go next, I'm interested in seeing what does this look like when we replicate it on a broader scale and bring people together from different departments. Because if we can sort of infuse this into our leadership model throughout all of our departments, where we have lots of people who are equipped to implement some of the coaching practices that they have learned and let that trickle down through their teams, I think there's a lot of opportunity for reach and capacity building in that way. So when I think about what's next, that's where I'm looking.
Mm-hmm. Jess, how about you? Any additional thoughts?
Well, Jessica stole my answer. There's that. But
Sorry.
It's all good. It's
same name, same idea.
Yeah. But I really do think, I think it's, first of all, it's a slightly, dare I say, obvious thing. This is the first time that this has been done in this way. So what's the natural question is, what happens if it's done again? What happens if it's done elsewhere? And Jessica highlighted a key, and we don't know what would be different until we find out, and we're going to. But the fact that they were all from the same department is important in a few different ways, that there's some part of a shared context that they have that might not be the case if you're from different departments. They also had, in some cases, pre-established relationships with each other, which come up in data as something that was valuable, and they did not all, and they were not necessarily all deep, but there was some sort of familiarity with one another in some cases that might not be as true if you go broader organizationally. And it will be interesting, and it will be important to see how much that matters. And we don't really know that yet. And I'm really excited to try and figure that out on the road.
Absolutely. Yes. And, maybe some foreshadowing that my hope and my expectation is, so outside of this Duke Healthcare Academic Medicine situation, my Tower Scope Leadership Academy assessments, which I've tried to mirror, have come out with the same exact results, the same outcomes. And I'm hoping that we can see that and replicate it back internal to Duke. So look for group coaching the paper, group coaching the movie. No. All right, audience. What did you take away? And more importantly, what is one small change that you can implement this week based on what you learned from our guests today, Mara Becker, Jessica Schoenberg, and Jess Sperling? Share it with us on LinkedIn at Mira Brancu or at talkradio.nyc so we can cheer you on. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all over the place, but LinkedIn is where I live online, and that's where I'm going to respond. In addition to being a live show, we're on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon podcasts. Please help increase our visibility, reach, and impact by leaving a review. The stuff we talk about on the show, and especially what we talked about today, is part of our research-based strategic leadership pathway roadmap that we also teach in our Tower Scope Leadership Academy and offer in group coaching. It's for socially conscious leaders in disrupted learning and innovation industries looking to make a greater impact. You can go to gotowerscope.com to learn more. If you're interested in the Leadership Academy, you click on Leadership Academy. And I want you to look for the accelerator program that we're opening up, which is a much briefer, more accelerated process. Thank you to talkradio.nyc for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, your host of the Hard Skills Show. And thank you for joining us today, Dr. Mara Becker, Jessica Schoenberg, Dr. Jess Sperling. Thank you very much, all three of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, it was so fun, so fun. And have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.